Screen is visible. Please continue.
Okay, so should we wait or should I start?
You can start
Okay,
because
ma'am.
also I've started the recording.
So I'll be presenting the five most fascinating endemic creatures of India. So endemic creatures are creatures which are found in a unique place. So they are localized, and so the Sikkim plus the Seven Sisters has the most number of endemic species. So I'll start. My first animal is the lion-tailed macaw. So it lives in the habitation of 1500 meters in the evergreen and semi-evergreen monsoon forest with broadleaf trees. Its body length is 46 to 61 centimeters. The male weigh 9 to 11 kgs and the female weigh 7 to 8 kgs. There are less than 2000 lion-tailed macaw which exist in the world. Mm. Um, they are named lion-tailed macaw for their tail. They are not for their mane, but for their tail tufts. Their decrease is due to fragmentation, hunting, and pet trade. This is where these species are found. The next is Jordan cruiser. They are endemic to Andhra Pradesh in the Eastern Ghats. They mostly have two breast bands which are yellow in color and a black bill and an orange chestnut broad patch. They have cryptic sandy brown plumage. They have a slim body and they have two long legs. They are 27 meters long. They are small and nocturnal birds and they are ground dwelling birds. Um, It was first discovered by Thomas Jordan. Thus, its name is the Jordan Cruiser. Um, this is where it is found. The Narcondam hornbill. Um, it is also its scientific name is Rhyticeros narcodami. Its size is 45 centimeters to 50 centimeters. The male weighs 700 grams to 750 grams and the female weighs from 600 grams to 750 grams. Their diet is mostly fruit, berries, and fig. Fig is his favorite fruit. Its distribution is it is endemic to Andaman island called the Narcodam, and it is an volcanic island. Um, this is where it's found. Sangai. Um, it is also called the dancing deer or bro altered deer. Its distribution is in the Kebul Lamjao National Park, which is a national park in Manipur, but it's mostly found all over Manipur. Its height is um, 115 centimeters to 125 centimeters, and its weight is 90 to 150 kgs. It is highly endangered. It was endangered from 1950s. This is my last endemic species. This is the Gir Asiatic lion. Its scientific name is Panthera leo persica. It is endangered and is endemic to the Gir forest of Gujarat. Uh, its body length is 2.9 meters, and the male weigh 160 to 190 kgs, while the females weigh 110 to 120 kgs. Their lifespan is 18 to 20 years, and their diet is most deer, antelope, boar, and cat. This is where they are normally found. Uh, Thank you, and I'm done.
Thank you so much, Viranshi. Such a wonderful and fantastic presentation, and something which is totally related to the chapter which
Thank
we
you.
are going to start, conservation of animals and plants. Very good. And
Thank
I
you.
would like to tell other students also, why don't, I know this is not compulsory, but motivation should be intrinsic. It should come from inside. You have to learn something. I cannot force you, all of you, for everything. Okay,
Ma'am,
so next, who is presenting? Who is
ma'am,
left?
Saloni and me.
Yes, Saloni. I'll just
Ma'am, make me the presenter.
okay,
I
I'm making you the presenter. Yes, now you are the presenter. Do you want to see your empty classrooms? I can show it to you. This is, I'm sitting in 10th B class. The classes are empty. Yes, Sarah, you can present.
Ma'am, can you see my screen?
Yes, your screen is visible and speak
Yes.
loudly.
Yes, ma'am. So today we are going to do the presentation on extinct animals. So extinction is the termination of a kind of organism or a group of kinds, usually species. The moment of extinction is generally considered to be the death of the last individual of the species, although the capacity to breed and recover may have been lost before this point. Because a species' potential range may be very large, determining this moment is difficult and usually done re- retrospective, retrospectively. So, our first extinct animal is from Cameroon, which is in Central Africa. The animal is the West African black rhinoceros. The West African black rhinoceros was found in several countries towards the southeast region of Africa, measuring 3 to 3.8 meters long and 1.4 to 1.7 meters in height. The rhino would have weighed 800 to 1,300 kgs. It had two horns, one measuring 0.5 to 1.3 meters and the other between 2 to 55 centimeters. Their diet included leafy plants and shoots. Some believe their horns had medical properties, though this had no grounding in scientific fact, which led to heavy poaching. In the 1930s, preservation action was taken to protect the species, but the numbers continued to decline. The last West African black rhino was seen in Cameroon in 2006. It was declared officially extinct in 2011. The next extinct animal is from the Yangtze River in China. It is the Baiji white dolphin. So the Baiji white dolphin, also called the Chinese river dolphin, can only be found in the Yangtze River in China. These mammals could grow to 8 feet long and weigh up to a quarter of a ton. They relied on echolocation to navigate and hunt for prey due to their tiny eyes and very poor eyesight. Living in the Yangtze for 20 million years, their numbers declined drastically from the 1950s onwards. As China industrialized, the river was used for fishing, transportation, and hydroelectricity, which had a huge effect on the mammals. Although not officially recorded as extinct, no one has seen a Yangtze River dolphin since 2002. So
Oh, dear,
here's a
2002.
yes, ma'am. So here's a video I want to show you.
And in India also in Ganges, and we have endangered species of dolphin.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, can you hear it?
Yes, yes, I can hear.
Within the last couple of decades, this population has dramatically decreased in number. There's one really close. They are incredibly challenging to study because when they do surface, they don't bring much of their bodies out the water. So it's difficult to identify individuals and it's difficult to really discern what type of behaviour is occurring. For photo identification of individual dolphins, for many species, we use the shape or the coloration that you find on their dorsal area, particularly their dorsal fin. The main cause of mortality for this species previously was entanglement in gill nets. The RiverGuard programme was put in place to remove the illegal gill nets which are being set in the dolphin sanctuary areas, so the chances of dolphins becoming entangled in these nets, of course, are far less if they simply aren't there. We're quite hopeful because we've seen a decrease in adult mortality, and there are several new calves in the last 2 years as well. The last population estimate was for 92 individual dolphins in the area, and that's an increase on 12 from the previous estimate. So we're very hopeful that this population is now on the road to recovery. I think one of the most spectacular things about this particular population is the setting itself. They are such an integral part of the communities that live around the rivers. You know, the people that live in the Mekong area rely entirely on the river habitat, as do the dolphins. The dolphins and the humans, it's all part of one big system that's really clear to see.
So that was the video. So the next one is in the Iberian Peninsula, which is in Europe. Here the Pyrenean ibex got extinct. So
Is it near Spain?
yes, ma'am.
Okay.
One of 4 subspecies of the Spanish ibex or Iberian goat that was found in the Iberian Peninsula, the ibex would grow to a height of 60 to 76 centimeter at the shoulder and weigh 24 to 80 kgs and feed mainly on grasses and herbs. They were thought to have numbered 50,000 historically, but by the early 90s its number has fallen to fewer than 100. The exact cause of the Pyrenean ibex extinction is unknown. Scientists believe factors included poaching and inability to compete with other mammals for food and habitat. The last Pyrenean ibex was killed by a falling tree in northern Spain in 2000. So here's a video.
Hey guys, today is episode 8 of Extinction Diaries, the Pyrenean ibex. The Pyrenean ibex was a subspecies of Spanish ibex, and two of these subspecies are extinct, the Pyrenean pictured here and the Portuguese pictured here. Now this wild goat species lived in the Pyrenees mountain range on the border of Spain and France. They ate wild herbs, grasses, and wildflowers. They lived in rocky pine forests, but in winter they migrated to lower altitudes to escape heavy snowfall. They went extinct due to competition of livestock for grazing grounds and the fact that most hunters completely disregarded the rule that you're not allowed to shoot ibex when they came down to the valleys in winter. But most people didn't care because it was so remote, law enforcement really couldn't punish them. And they went extinct in 2000 when the last ibex, a female named Celia, was crushed by a falling tree during an avalanche. Now, they did go extinct in 2000, so that's why there's so many real-life photos. And bye!
So that was the video.
Such a enthusiastic student. I think that was some student's voice.
Yes, ma'am. So the next one is in the North America. So here the passenger pigeon. So native to North America, the passenger or wild pigeon has been extinct since the early 20th century. It is estimated that between 3 and 5 billion passenger pigeons inhabited in the US when Europeans arrived in North America. But their settlement led to mass deforestation, resulting in habitat loss and reduction in the bird population. By the 19th century, pigeon meat was commercialized as a cheap food for the poor, which resulted in hunting on a massive scale. The passenger pigeon died out in the wild by around 1900.
This pigeon looks so beautiful, and pigeons around us now they have created havoc in society. Everywhere you see, there are many pigeons. And this particular passenger pigeon is so beautiful. It is so different from the regular pigeon.
With the last known individual dying in captivity in 1914. So the next will be explained by Saloni.
Ma'am, can you hear me?
Yes, Saloni, loudly.
So the next animal got extinct in Tasmanian, Australian state. The Tasmanian tiger, native to Australia, Tasmania and New Guinea. The Tasmanian tiger was a large carnivorous marsupial that not related to tigers. The creature had the appearance of a medium to large sized dog. It weighed 30 kgs with a nose to tail length of almost 2 meters. But dark stripes gave it a tiger like appearance. It is believed to have been hunted to extinction. This was encouraged by bounties, but human encroachment into its habitat, the introduction of dogs and disease could also have contributed. The last wild Tasmanian tiger was killed between 1910 and 1920, with the last captive one dying in Hobart Zoo, Tasmania in 1936. This animal was extinct in Near Islands group of islands in Alaska. Steele's sea cow, named after George Steele, a naturalist who discovered the creature in 1741. Steele's sea cow was a large herbivorous mammal. It is believed that Steller sea cow, which grew to at least 8 to 9 meters and weighed around 8 to 10 tons, inhabited the near islands, southwest of Alaska and the Commander Islands in the Bering Sea. It is believed that the mammal was tame and spent most of its time eating kelp. This and the fact that it was unable to submerge its enormous body is possibly what made it vulnerable to human hunters. Within 27 years of discovery by Europeans, Steller sea cow was hunted to extinction. Next place is in Atlantic Ocean. The great auk, a large and flightless bird found in North Atlantic and as far south as northern Spain. It had an average height of 75 to 85 centimeters and weighed about 5 kgs. The great auk was a powerful swimmer which helped it to hunt underwater for food. The last colony of auks lived on the island of LD, and by 1835 they had all been killed. The last of these birds was killed by 3 men who caught it on St Kilda, Scotland in 1844. When a large storm surged, they believed that the auk was a witch and was causing the storm, so they killed it. Here's a short video on them.
Humanity has collectively been responsible for a depressingly large amount of animals going extinct in our relatively short time on this earth. However, perhaps no creature was wiped from the face of the planet for as silly a reason as the great auk. Once endemic to the North Atlantic, the great auk was a flightless seabird not too dissimilar in appearance to a penguin. In fact, penguins are believed to have gotten their name from the great auk's scientific name of Penguinius impennis, due to an early and incorrect belief that the two birds must be related due to their appearance. Moving swiftly on, at one point in time, the North Atlantic was positively lousy with great auks, with the bird being found everywhere from the coasts of Great Britain to the rocky inlets near Canada. Naturally, the abundance of great auks made them a popular source of food for sailors who are said to have hunted them in massive numbers. Being a flightless bird, more at home in the sea than on land, sailors found hunting great auks to be an almost comically simple affair, since the bird's awkward, ungainly waddle on land meant that they couldn't exactly run away with any grace, let alone any precision or speed. The fact that great auks supposedly didn't fear humans only made hunting them easier, to the point where there were reports of sailors simply walking onto the islands that were covered in great auks with a sack and just casually picking up the birds by the handful. As early as the late 16th century, experts were made aware that the population of the bird in some areas had been nearly totally decimated by hunters, and a number of protections were put in place to perhaps save the species from being completely wiped out. Said protections included whipping the living crap out of anyone caught stealing the eggs of the bird, which still didn't stop people from hunting them anyway, because it's not like the ocean was going to snitch on them. By the early 1800s, the bird was critically endangered, to the point that some sailors believed it to be totally extinct, which ironically may have led to the bird's ultimate demise. You see, news of the bird's rarity caused private collectors and museums to issue large bounties for surviving specimens to display. This, in turn, caused the sailors to hunt the few remaining great auks in existence with a renewed zeal. By the 1840s, the bird was all but extinct when the very last breeding pair was killed by a trio of sailors. The sailors, under orders from a merchant who wanted a pair of great auk pelts for display, found the birds nesting on a rock. Not wanting to startle them, by this point the birds were understandably wary of humans, the trio snuck up under the cover of night and literally strangled them both to death. Then, for no particular reason other than screw the great auk, they stomped the bird's nest a few times to destroy the egg that they had been incubating. And if you didn't think that was spiteful enough, we should probably point out here that almost exactly 4 years earlier, from when the last breeding pair of great auks were killed, the last great auk ever seen in British waters was unceremoniously beaten to death with a stick sick by a bunch of superstitious sailors who thought that it was a witch. So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button below and don't forget to subscribe.
So this was a short video on the Great Auk.
Nice video.
The next place is Mauritius, a country in East Africa. The dodo, an extinct
Just a minute, Saloni. Children, please pay attention to the dodo bird, because this is the bird which is highly known to everyone, and there is a story behind it. So please pay attention when Saloni is reading out the information. Thank you, Saloni. You can proceed.
The dodo, an extinct flightless bird that inhabited Mauritius. The dodo was about 1 meter tall and may have weighed 10 to 18 kg. The only account we have of the dodo's appearance is through varied illustrations and written accounts from the 17th century, so its exact appearance remains unresolved. It is presumed the bird became flightless due to the availability of abundant food resources, seeds, roots, and fallen fruits, and a relative absence of predators. Dutch sailors first recorded a mention of the dodo in 1598. The bird was hunted to extinction by sailors and their domesticated animals and invasive species. The last widely accepted sighting of a dodo was in 1662. The next place is the Wrangel Island, which is in Russia. The woolly mammoth, an enormous mammal believed to be closely related to the modern-day elephant. Its ancestors migrated out of Africa about 3.5 million years ago, spreading across northern Eurasia and North America. The creature was over 4 meters tall and could weigh over 6 tons. They were covered in fur, and their covered tusks could easily be up to 5 meters long. The woolly mammoth eventually disappeared 10,000 years ago through a combination of hunting by humans and the disappearance of its habitat through climate change. The last of the isolated woolly mammoth populations is believed to have vanished from the Wrangel Island in the Arctic Ocean around 1700 BC. There's a short video on this animal.
Woolly mammoths roamed the planet for about 250,000 years. The last holdouts vanished from Siberia about 10,000 years ago. What caused the die-off? The story begins at the last ice age, known as the Pleistocene. It began about 1.8 million years ago and lasted until about 11,700 years ago. The continents had already moved to their current positions. Sheets of ice covered large parts of Europe as well as the other continents. The climate was much colder and drier than it is today. Average global temperatures were about 41 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit below today's norms. Most of the water on Earth's surface was frozen. Rainfall was about half of what it is today. Sea levels sank almost 400 feet. Whole bodies of water dried up or froze. The British Isles became part of the continental landmass. One Ice Age feature was an area known as the tundra steppe, a kind of prairie. Steppes are areas too dry to support a forest, but not dry enough to become desert. And they're ideal environments for giant meandering grazing machines. The tundra steppe developed into a mammoth mecca. About 13,000 years ago, more than 3/4 of the large Ice Age animals, including woolly mammoths, died out. For years, scientists have debated the cause of the extinction, with both of the major causes, human overhunting and climate change, insufficient to account for such a mega die-off. Recent research suggests that an extraterrestrial object, possibly a comet about 3 miles wide, may have exploded over southern Canada, nearly wiping out all Stone Age culture as well as mammoths. One thing is certain. The onset of the warm period made their lives difficult. Dark skies and rain signaled the end of the golden age of the mammoth steppe. In Europe, the mammoth's home was forever changed. Higher precipitation patterns in summer and winter caused forests to grow and spread. Other animals adapted to these new conditions, but without abundant grass, the mammoths faltered. As they were driven further north, a damp tundra began to replace the dry mammoth steppe. Gradually, the animals died out, first in West Central Europe. For thousands of years, Siberia remained their only refuge. The last surviving population lived on remote Wrangel Island, off the coast of northeast Siberia. They finally disappeared around 3,700 years ago, when the Great Pyramids were already 1,000 years old. But they didn't disappear without a trace. Far from it.
Many of you all must have seen the movie Ice Age. This animal was there in that.
Yes.
in the animated version of it.
Yes.
Ma'am.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you so much, Saloni, for such a wonderful presentation. Very well articulated, both of you. And actually, what we do is generally we read the names of the extinct animals, but you have shown us visually, and we have seen their habitat also, where they actually belong. Thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. Now, one thing before I forget, Adit Kapre has participated in one of the photography contest, and by afternoon, we don't know the exact time, the photograph will be uploaded. Yourself. Okay, Arhan Rastogi it was. So what I was telling is that I will share the link in the chat box by afternoon whenever they upload the link. So all of you please share the link with your friends, and also please like. So the maximum like, whoever gets the maximum like will win this. So there are many from our school from 8th standard, only one entry is there, that is Adit Kapre's entry is there. So I can show.
Saloni,
Yes.
I entered.
Sorry?
This
No,
is
that
Saloni.
is a different drawing competition you're talking about. No,
Ma'am,
that's the Times of India, that is different. This is by GGIS, and this is the photograph that is taken by Adit Kapre. The theme is hope. Okay, so you have to like this photograph. Why you're worried? Already the entry has gone from the school. The theme is hope. Apurva, you want to say something?
ma'am, can we still enter, or is it like?
There is a photography competition by Times of India. You can enter into that. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
A mail has been sent. I have sent it to 8C class yesterday by Times of India. There is a photography competition. So you can register in that and then can participate. Okay?
Ma'am, can I also?
Whoever wish to participate, they can. The class teachers will send a mail. Maybe I have sent it yesterday. Your class teacher might be sending. 8D class teacher might be sending it today if she has not sent yesterday. Okay. Okay, children. So we'll begin with the chapter conservation of plants and animals. But before we begin, again, it's a reminder. The link will be shared and it will be put in the chat box. Please like the photograph and also please share it in all your WhatsApp groups so that everyone can the maximum likes then our school can get. Okay? Please do not be jealous that okay, from our class this child is participating. We have to make a student from our school to win. Okay, so we'll start with the chapter conservation of plants and animals. But after going through so many presentations, we got an idea about the chapter, right? So let me share my screen and let me share my presentation.
Ma'am,
Yes.
ma'am, this is Rida. Actually, the other day I was facing some issues with the laptop, and it was not available for me. So, is it fine if I present it now?
I was asking now everyone. Okay, yes, yes. Now you can present. You were not there, you joined the meeting now?
No, ma'am, I joined it at 9:18 or something.
Okay, then I was asking who else is left, who else is left then.
I think I joined a bit late. I think you asked before that.
Okay, so I'm making you presenter.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
now you can present. Apurva, you want to still say something because your hands are raised? Your
No,
hand
ma'am.
is
Sorry, ma'am.
okay.
Ma'am, can you see it?
Yes, it is visible and
Yes,
voice
ma'am.
is also clear.
So, hello everyone, I'm Rida, and today I would like to present my Google Earth project, which is Discovery of Cell. So, as we all know, cells are the foundational level of the organization of life. An organism may be unicellular, as with prokaryotes and most of the eukaryotic protists, or multicellular, where the functions of an organism are divided into different collections of specialized cells. In the multicellular eukaryotes, cells are the building blocks of complex structures and can have various forms and functions. Cells are the building blocks of all living organisms, whether it is a single cell that forms an entire organism, which is a bacterium, for example, and they are known as unicellular organisms, or trillions of them, such as humans. No matter what organism a cell is part of, they share specific characteristics. Every living cell has a plasma membrane, a bilayer of lipids which separates the watery solution inside the cell, which is also known as cytoplasm, from the exterior or outside of the cell. Furthermore, a living cell can replicate itself, which requires that it possesses genetic information which is encoded in its DNA. The DNA can be localized to a particular area of the cell, as in the nucleoid of a prokaryotic cell, or it can be contained inside another membrane, such as the nucleus of eukaryotes. Eukaryote means true nucleus. The word prokaryote hence implies that the cell is from a group that arose from the before the membrane-bound nuclei which appeared in the history of life. So here are some key terms which I have included in the paragraph. The membrane. A membrane is a lipid bilayer that surrounds enclosed spaces and compartments. This selectively permeable structure is essential for the effective separation of a cell or organelle from its surroundings. Then next we have a plasma membrane. The plasma membrane, also called a cell membrane, is the membrane found in all cells that separates the interior of the cell from its exterior. In bacterial and plant cells, a cell wall is attached to the plasma membrane on its outside surface. Then the bilayer of lipids or phospholipid layer is a thin polar membrane made up of two layers of lipid molecules. These membranes are flat sheets that form a continuous barrier around all the cells. The cell membranes of almost all organisms and many viruses are made up of lipid bilayers. A lipid bilayer is the barrier that keeps ions, proteins, and other molecules where they are needed and prevents them from diffusing into areas where they should not be. Then the DNA or the deoxyribonucleic acid is a molecule that is composed of two polynucleotide chains that coil around each other in a double helix structure, which carries the genetic instructions for development, functioning, growth, and reproduction of all known organisms and many viruses. DNA and ribonucleic acids are two examples of nucleic acids. Then we have proteins. Proteins are a diverse collection of protists are a diverse collection of organisms. While exceptions exist, they are primarily microscopic and unicellular, or they are made up of a single cell. The cells of protists are highly organized with a nucleus and organelle. So now I would like to present my Google Earth project. So as we all know that cells are all organisms are composed of one or more cells. A cell is the basic unit of life. All the cells consist of cytoplasm enclosed within a membrane, and the cytoplasm it contains many biomolecules such as proteins as well as nucleic acids. The cells are mainly of two types, eukaryotic, which contain organelles and a well-defined nucleus and other special parts, and prokaryotic that do not contain a nucleus and membrane-enclosed organelles. Prokaryotes are always unicellular organisms, whereas eukaryotes can be either single-celled or multicellular. Now the cells, they emerged on Earth at least 3.5 billion years ago. The number of cells in plants and animals varies from species to species. Most animal and plant cells are only visible under a microscope, which has dimensions between 1 and 100 micrometers. Organisms can be classified as unicellular, which consist of a single cell, such as bacteria, or multicellular, which includes plants and animals. Most unicellular are classed as microorganisms. So this is actually a fun fact and a fact worth knowing that it has been estimated humans contain somewhere around 40 trillion cells. The human brain accounts for around 80 billion of these total cells. So here is a video that will help us understand all these concepts better.
Cells are the smallest living units of an organism. All cells have three things in common, no matter what type of cell they are. All cells have a cell membrane, which separates the inside of the cell from its environment, cytoplasm, which is a jelly-like fluid, and DNA, which is the cell's genetic material. There are two broad categories of cells. The first category is eukaryotic cells. They have organelles, which include the nucleus and other special parts. Eukaryotic cells are more advanced complex cells, such as those found in plants and animals. The second category is prokaryotic cells. They don't have a nucleus or membrane-enclosed organelles. They do have genetic material, but it's not contained within a nucleus. Prokaryotic cells are always one-celled or unicellular organisms, such as bacteria. So, what are organelles? Organelle means little organ. Organelles are the specialized parts of a cell that have unique jobs to perform. Let's start with the nucleus, the control center of the cell. The nucleus contains DNA, or genetic material. DNA dictates what the cell is going to do and how it's going to do it. Chromatin is the tangled, spread-out form of DNA found inside the nuclear membrane. When a cell is ready to divide, DNA condenses into structures known as chromosomes. The nucleus also contains a nucleolus, which is a structure where ribosomes are made. After ribosomes leave the nucleus, they will have the important job of synthesizing or making proteins. Outside the nucleus, the ribosomes and the rest of the organelles float around in cytoplasm, which is the jelly-like substance. Ribosomes may wander freely within the cytoplasm or attach to the endoplasmic reticulum, sometimes abbreviated as ER. There are two types of ER. Rough ER has ribosomes attached to it, and smooth ER doesn't have ribosomes attached to it. The endoplasmic reticulum is a membrane-enclosed passageway for transporting materials, such as the proteins synthesized by ribosomes. Proteins and other materials emerge from the endoplasmic reticulum in small vesicles, where the Golgi apparatus, sometimes called the Golgi body, receives them. As proteins move through the Golgi body, they're customized into forms that the cell can use. The Golgi body does this by folding the proteins into usable shapes, or adding other materials onto them, such as lipids or carbohydrates. Vacuoles are sac-like structures that store different materials. Here, in this plant cell, the central vacuole stores water. Going back to the animal cell, you will see an organelle called a lysosome. Lysosomes are the garbage collectors that take in damaged or worn-out cell parts. They are filled with enzymes that break down this cellular debris. The mitochondrion is an organelle that is the powerhouse for both animal and plant cells. During a process called cellular respiration, the mitochondria make ATP molecules that provide the energy for all of the cell's activities. Cells that need more energy have more mitochondria. Meanwhile, the cell maintains its shape through a cytoskeleton. The cytoskeleton includes the thread-like microfilaments, which are made of protein, and microtubules, which are thin, hollow tubes. Some organisms, such as plants, that are photoautotrophic, meaning they capture sunlight for energy, have cells with an organelle called a chloroplast. The chloroplast is where photosynthesis happens. It's green because it has a green pigment called chlorophyll. Plant cells also have a cell wall outside of their cell membranes that shape, support, and protect the plant cell. Animal cells never have a cell wall. There are many other unique structures that only some cells have. Here are just a few. In humans, for example, the respiratory tract is lined with cells that have cilia. These are microscopic hair-like projections that can move in waves. This feature helps trap inhaled particles in the air and expels them when you cough. Another unique feature in some cells is flagella. Some bacteria have flagella. A flagellum is like a little tail that can help a cell move or propel itself. The only human cell that has a flagellum is a sperm cell. In summary, remember, eukaryotic cells are plant and animal cells with a nucleus and membrane-enclosed organelles, while prokaryotic cells are unicellular organisms without these things. All cells have a cell membrane, cytoplasm, and genetic material. And even though only plant cells have chloroplasts, both plant and animal cells have mitochondria.
So that was the video. Then the discovery of cells was very important. The cell was first discovered by Robert Hooke in 1665, which can be found to be described in his book Micrographia. In this book, he gave 60 observations in detail of various objects under a coarse and compound microscope. One observation was from very thin slices of bottle cork, which are nothing but dead plant cells. Hooke discovered a multiple tiny pores that he named cells. This came from the Latin word cella, meaning a small room like the one in which monks lived, and also cellulae, which meant the six-sided cell of a honeycomb. So here is a short autobiography of Robert Hooke. Robert Hooke was born in the town of Freshwater on England's Isle of Wight on July 18th of 1635. His parents were John Hooke, who served as a curate for the local church parish, and Cecily Hooke. Initially a sickly child, Hooke grew to be a quick learner who was interested in painting, and he was very adept at making mechanical toys and models. After his father's death in 1648, the 13-year-old Hooke was sent to London to apprentice with the painter Peter Lely. This connection turned out to be a short one, and he went instead to study at the London's Westminster School. In 1653, Hooke enrolled at the Oxford Christ Church College, where he supplemented his meagre funds by working as an assistant to the scientist Robert Boyle. Hooke was appointed curator of experiments for the newly formed Royal Society of London in 1662, a position which he obtained with Boyle's support. Hooke became a fellow of the society in 1663. Hooke's most important publication was Micrographia, a 1665 volume which documented the experiments he had made with a microscope. In this groundbreaking study, he coined the term cell while discussing the structure of a cork. He also described flies, feathers, and snowflakes, and correctly identified fossils as remnants of once living things. Now, the cell theory is a scientific and historic theory which is now universally accepted that all living organisms are made up of cells and that they are the basic or structural organizational unit of all organisms. And all cells come from pre-existing cells. Cells are the basic unit of structure in all organisms and also the basic unit of reproduction. So the history of cell theory is highly debated upon, and here is why we can see that the credit for developing the cell theory is usually given to two scientists, which is Theodor Schwann and Matthias Jakob Schleiden. In 1839, Schleiden suggested that every structural part of a plant was made up of cells or the result of cells. He also suggested that cells were made by a crystallization process either within other cells or from the outside of that cell. However, this was not an original idea of Schleiden. He claimed his theory as own, though Barthélemy du Motier had stated it years before him. This crystallization process is no longer accepted with the modern cell theory. In 1839, Theodor Schwann states that with all plants, animals are composed of cells or the product of cells in their structures. This was a major advancement in the field of biology since little was known about animal structure up to this point compared to plants. From these conclusions about plants and animals, two of the three tenets of the cell theory were postulated. One, that all living organisms are composed of one or more cells, and two, that the cell is the most basic unit of life. Schleiden's theory of free cell formation through crystallization was refuted in the 1850s by Robert Remak, Rudolf Virchow, and Albert Kolliker. In 1855, Rudolf Virchow added the third tenet to the cell theory, which was in Latin. This tenet in English states, all cells arise from pre-existing cells. However, that the idea that all cells come from pre-existing cells had in fact already been proposed by Robert Remak. He published his observations in 1852 on cell division, claiming Schleiden and Schwann were incorrect about generation schemes. He said that binary fission, which was first introduced by Dumotier, was how reproduction of new animal cells was made. Once this tenet or point was added, this classical cell theory was complete. So here is another video which will help us understand the history of the cell theory better.
Rita, the video is 6 minutes long, so then you can play for some time and then stop.
Okay, ma'am.
One of the great things about science is that when scientists make a discovery, it's not always in a prescribed manner, as in only in a laboratory under strict settings with white lab coats and all sorts of neat science gizmos that go beep. In reality, the events and people involved in some of the major scientific discoveries are as weird and varied as they get. My case in point, the weird history of the cell theory.
Ma'am, I'm sorry to interrupt, but actually, I just remembered that this video has the points of the cell theory in like different stages. So I don't know exactly where it'll state the whole thing, but I think I'll need to play the whole video then.
Okay, because I think the classes, when you have the next class?
Ma'am, it's not until 11:30.
Okay, great. Then anyways, the session is recorded, then you can play. I'm here. And those, for others, please stay here because the cell chapter is very important. It's not like that. Rida has made a lovely presentation that we can definitely use for the revision purpose and for the explanation purpose of the cell. And yes, Rida, please continue.
Yes, ma'am.
There are three parts to the cell theory. 1. All organisms are composed of one or more cells. 2. The cell is the basic unit of structure and organization in organisms. And 3. All cells come from pre-existing cells. To be honest, this all sounds incredibly boring until you dig a little deeper into how the world of microscopic organisms and this theory came to be. It all started in the early 1600s in the Netherlands, where a spectacle maker named Zacharias Janssen is said to have come up with the first compound microscope, along with the first telescope. Both claims are often disputed, as apparently he wasn't the only bored guy with a ton of glass lenses to play with at the time. Despite this, the microscope soon became a hot item that every naturalist or scientist at the time wanted to play with, making it much like the iPad of its day. One such person was a fellow Dutchman by the name of Anton van Leeuwenhoek, who heard about these microscope doohickeys, and instead of going out and buying one, he decided to make his own. And it was a strange little contraption indeed, as it looked more like a tiny paddle the size of a sunglass lens. If he had stuck two together, it probably would have made a wicked set of sunglasses that you couldn't see much out of. Anywho, once Leeuwenhoek had his microscope ready, he went to town looking at anything and everything he could with them, including the gunk on his teeth. Yes, you heard right. He actually discovered bacteria by looking at dental scrapings, which, when you keep in mind that people didn't brush their teeth much, if at all, back then, he must have had a lovely bunch of bacteria to look at. When he wrote about his discovery, he didn't call them bacteria as we know them today, but he called them animalcules because they looked like little animals to him. While Leeuwenhoek was staring at his teeth gunk, he was also sending letters to a scientific colleague in England by the name of Robert Hooke. Hooke was a guy who really loved all aspects of science, so he dabbled in a little bit of everything, including physics, chemistry, and biology. Thus it is Hooke who we can thank for the term the cell, as he was looking at a piece of cork under his microscope, and the little chambers he saw reminded him of cells, or the rooms monks slept in their monasteries. Think college dorm rooms, but without the TVs, computers, and really annoying roommates. Hooke was something of an underappreciated scientist of his day, something he brought upon himself as he made the mistake of locking horns with one of the most famous scientists ever, Sir Isaac Newton. Remember when I said Hooke dabbled in many different fields? Well, after Newton published a groundbreaking book on how planets move due to gravity, Hooke made the claim that Newton had been inspired by Hooke's work in physics. Newton, to say the least, did not like that, which sparked a tense relationship between the two that lasted even after Hooke died, as quite a bit of Hooke's research, as well as his only portrait, was misplaced due to Newton. Much of it was rediscovered, thankfully, after Newton's time, but not his portrait, as sadly no one knows what Robert Hooke looked like. Fast forward to the 1800s, where two German scientists discovered something that today we might find rather obvious, but helped tie together what we now know as the cell theory. The first scientist was Matthias Schleiden, a botanist who liked to study plants under a microscope. From his years of studying different plant species, it finally dawned on him that every single plant he had looked at were all made of cells. At the same time, on the other end of Germany was Theodor Schwann, a scientist who not only studied slides of animal cells under the microscope and got a special type of nerve cell named after him, but also invented rebreathers for firefighters and had a kickin' pair of sideburns. After studying animal cells for a while, he too came to the conclusion that all animals were made of cells. Immediately, he reached out via snail mail, as Twitter had yet to be invented, to other scientists working in the same field, and it was Schleiden who got back to him, and the two started working on the beginnings of the cell theory. A bone of contention arose between them, as for the last part of the cell theory, that cells come from pre-existing cells, Schleiden didn't exactly subscribe to that thought, as he swore cells came from free cell formation, where they just kind of spontaneously crystallized into existence. That's when another scientist, named Rudolf Virchow, stepped in with research showing that cells did come from other cells. Research that was actually, how to put it, borrowed without permission from a Jewish scientist by the name of Robert Remak, which led to two more feuding scientists. Thus, from teeth gunk to torquing off Newton, crystallization to Schwann cells, the cell theory came to be an important part of biology today. Some things we know about science today may seem boring, but how we came to know them is incredibly fascinating. So if something bores you, dig deeper. It's probably got a really weird story behind it somewhere.
So that was the video.
Fantastic video. I loved this video.
Thank you, ma'am. So the next which follows are short autobiographies of these two people who are credited for the formation of the cell theory by the name of Theodor Schwann and Matthias Jakob Schleiden. So Matthias Jakob Schleiden was born in Hamburg, a city of the Holy Roman Empire, on the 5th of April in 1804. He helped develop the cell theory in Germany during the 19th century. Schleiden studied common cells as the common element among all plants and animals. He contributed to the field of embryology through his introduction of the Zeiss microscope lens and via his work with cells and cell theory as an organizing principle of biology. He studied natural science at the University of Göttingen in Germany, but transferred to the University of Berlin, which was also in Germany, in 1835 to study plants. Johann Horkel, who was Schleiden's uncle, he encouraged him to study plant embryology. In Berlin, Schleiden worked in the laboratory of the zoologist Johannes Müller, where he met Theodor Schwann. Both of them studied cell theory and phytogenesis, the origin and developmental history of plants. They aimed to find a unit of organisms common to the animal and plant kingdoms. They began a collaboration, and later scientists often called Schleiden and Schwann as the founders of the cell theory. In 1838, Schleiden published Contributions to Our Knowledge of Phytogenesis, which translated in Germany to Beitrage zur Phytogenesis. The article outlined his theories of the roles which cells played as plants developed. Schleiden used microscopes from the onset of his career, and he contributed to the use of its use in his biological research. Both Schleiden and Schwann encouraged Carl Zeiss to develop a new microscope. Zeiss established a factory in Jena and continued to work on microscopes and microscope lenses. With the help of these more powerful and advanced lenses, Schleiden and Schwann developed their cell theory through microscope observation and experiments. Next, we have Theodor Schwann. The German biologist Theodor Schwann is considered the founder of the cell theory. He also discovered pepsin, the first digestive enzyme prepared from animal tissue, and experimented to disprove spontaneous generation. He was born at Neuss near Dusseldorf on the 7th of December in 1810 and lived till 1882. At the University of Bonn, which he entered in 1829, he met Johannes Müller, the physiologist, whom he assisted in his experiments. Schwann continued his medical studies at the University of Würzburg and later at the University of Berlin, from which he graduated in 1834. His doctoral dissertation dealt with the respiration of the chick embryo. In 1838, Swan became familiar with Matthias Leiden's microscopic research on plants. Leiden described plant cells and proposed a cell theory which he was certain was the key to plant anatomy and growth. Pursuing this line of research on animal tissues, Swan not only verified the existence of cells, but he traced the development of many other tissues from early embryo stages. This research and the cell theory which followed were summarized in microscopical researches on the similarity in the structure and growth of animals and plants in English. This work, which in Swan's own words demonstrated that the great barrier between the animal and vegetable kingdoms, which is the diversity of ultimate structure, thus vanishes, established the cell theory to the satisfaction of his contemporaries. Swan proposed three generalizations concerning the first nature of cells. First, animals and plants consist of cells plus their secretions. Second, these cells have independent lives, which third are subject to the organism's life. So that was all, and thank you, ma'am, and everyone for watching this presentation.
Yes, Rida, such a eye-opening presentation. Thank you so much. Very professional videos you have included. And thank you so much other students for waiting back. You can leave now. Thank you so much for the day. I will stop.
Thank you.
Bye, ma'am. Thank you.
Bye, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Bye, ma'am.